Hello everyone, this is Felix from GM Wolf. Today we're looking at user text input. So we're going to be looking at how we can get a player to type text in, and then of course we need to have some more features like using the backspace key to take off some text and being able to paste some text. So this could be used, for example, as a little text box where the player can enter his name and then it will be able to be used throughout the game. Or maybe if you're making an application where he needs to put his username and password, stuff like that. So these are features we're going to have. And then there are a few things we need to take into consideration. And the first thing is something that quite a few users may not know about, is that actually the pound sign, or some of you may know it as a hashtag sign, actually means a new line in GameMaker. And so if you just let the player type that in, it will cause GameMaker to actually display a new line instead of putting the sign in. And you may want the player to actually be able to put that sign in. So what we can do is instead put a backslash and then the pound sign, and this will allow you to display the pound sign, which is really quite useful. I think there may be a few other characters which mean special things, but we're just going to take this one into account. And if you do run into problems with different types of characters that you may want to use, you could basically use the very same system, because we're going to be building a system that's really quite easy to build upon. And also we need to make sure we know what keys we're going to be using. So we have to take key codes into account. What I mean by that is you don't want to accidentally type stuff in when you press, the left key or the control key, stuff like that. You want to make sure that the player actually pressed the key, which is a letter key, a key on your keyboard. So we're going to have a method of defining what keys you can use. So without further ado, let's jump into GameMaker. Let's find the right one. There you go. And what we're going to do is, first of all, create a new font. So I'm just going to press the font button over here, and I'm going to call it fnt_main. This is going to be the main font we're going to be using. Now you don't actually have to create a font. You could simply use the built-in font and not worry. However, I am going to be using it so I can make it a bit bigger, just in case it doesn't really show up well on the video. And yeah, in case you never used the font editor before, here you can preview what it's going to look like. You can choose the different fonts over here which are built into your computer. And then over here you can see the different characters which are included within this font. And if you like, you can actually add more by pressing the plus minus button and choosing, either you can choose the presets over here, so the normal letters, or the ASCII, could choose digits only, or only letters, etc. Or you could actually, add a file or add your own ASCII codes over here to choose the ones you want. However, we're just going to stick with the default 32 to 127 keys for now. Now, there is a reason why you would only limit yourself to a few characters and not all, and that is that the font is actually stored on the texture page, which means it actually takes up a lot of memory because of the way GameMaker handles fonts. Which means if you simply add them all, you will end up, using quite a bit of memory and ending up with loads and loads of texture pages, which will not only slow down your game, but also you could cause crashes if you go over the memory limit, etc. So it is important that you limit this to the characters you want. If you only wanted, for example, letters and numbers, you could take off all of these, etc. and you should be fine. So I'm just going to press OK for now. I'm not going to change any settings in there. And I'm going to create a new object. This is going to be our text input object, so I'm just going to call it obj_text, or input, I'll call it. And I'm going to straight up create a create event. And this is where we're going to define a few things. So first of all, just put a piece of code in there. We need to define our starting text. What is this text, originally? And we also need to create this variable so that we can use it throughout our object. And so we're just going to call it text. So this is going to be the basic text we have throughout the whole, time this object exists. So when you type into your object, it will be added to this text variable over here. And whenever you want to find what text is in this object, you just call this, reference this variable. So this is going to be our most important variable, but which holds the actual text which has been inputted. Next, we need to define the keys that we want to let the player use. So I'm going to call this enabled underscore keys. So yeah, these are the keys that you can use. And so it's going to be all the letters, the space, numbers, and maybe the slash key, and dots and comma. Now they don't all work. This method will work for the keys I'm going to use. I'm going to type in, but won't work for all the keys that you may want to use because of the way GameMaker handles key codes, the way your keyboard handles key codes, etc. And if you want to add more, you'll have to add those in manually. It's a limitation I've been trying to get around, and I really haven't found an easy way to do so. So for now, we're just gonna put all the letters, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. That should be all of them. And then space, and then numbers. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. So these are the ones we're going to add in today. You may have noticed that I use capital letters, and that is really quite important because of the way you get your key codes. You need to use, when you type in a key on the keyboard, it's always going to be a capital letter for the key code, even though the string you may enter is not a capital letter. This will make more sense when I actually write more code later on. So what we're gonna do is define our font right now. So drawer underscore set underscore font fnt main. Now ordinarily you would actually set this just before you draw everything and just after you draw everything. I'm just putting it here because we only have this one object. However, if you do have more objects with different fonts, etc., you should put this in the drawer event just before you draw everything else. Next is going to be a variable we're going to call blink. Now, if you look at the screen right now, you may see that we have a cursor that can move through the text. And when I'm moving it, it's not blinking. However, if I stop moving it, it's starting to blink. Now, this blink variable doesn't actually store whether it is blinking or not. It will store whether it's being displayed at the moment or not. I call it blink when I could call it, cursor on or whatever. Blink just made more sense for me when I wrote this tutorial, so I'm going to keep it at blink. And in order to make it blink, we're going to use an alarm. So first we need to define the interval between the blinks. So I'm going to call this blink speed. I'm going to set it to 15 because that seemed to be round about what other programs use. And then the alarm 0 is equal to 20. So we actually could just put blink speed. So that starts our alarm so that we can have the blinking going on. So this is it for the create event. Now let's add a alarm event. And that's just going to be for our blinking. So we can do blink is equal to not blink. So this will make it, if it's true, it's false. If it's false, it's true. And just put our alarm back to blink speed. So right now all we have is a blinking cursor and it's not even being displayed. But now we can actually start getting to the meat of the program. So we need to add an event, and the event that we're going to be using is key press any key. So if I'm pressing any key, this be it the space, letters, numbers, even a function key, this event will be triggered. However, we only want it to be triggered if it is one of the enabled keys. So we're going to use a if statement. So if string underscore count. Oops, something went wrong. If string count. String count, for those of you who do not know, will return the number of substrings you have in a string. So say my substring here is A, like so, and my string is LA, for example, then it will return one because there's only one A in LA. What we're going to use is CHR, which stands for character of keyboard key, and our string is our enabled keys. Is it enabled keys? Yeah, like so. And so what this does, this car here, will return the character that whatever key code you put in stands for, and keyboard key is the key code of the current key being pressed on your keyboard. So if I press the L key, it'll return a key code which is probably something around, I want to say 70 something, or is it less? Actually, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I think it's around 70 something. And then car will change that number from the that key code into a character. So if I press L, this over here will return L, and then I'm counting how many times there is this L key inside our enabled keys letter over here. So if it's one, basically it says that if it's in there more than once, go ahead. However, we do have a problem, and it's that some keyboard keys may return a number which is, if you do character of a certain keyboard key, it may return more than one character, which may be inside our string over here. I think an example of this is the left key on your keyboard. This will still trigger this if statement because of how keyboard keys works, etc. So all we need to do really is check that the string length of a car keyboard key is exactly equal to 1. And so this makes sure that some keyboard keys which will return a car of more than 1, which is also part of our long string, don't get triggered by making sure that car of keyboard key is only 1, so that we only have one key being pressed at a time, sort of, not really. What we need to do now is well, add the character to our text, and so we could just go text plus is equal to keyboard last car. Last car. Now, keyboard last car defines the last character inside our keyboard string. So say if I press A, the last character in our keyboard string will be A. If I press Shift A, the last character on our keyboard card will be capital A, etc. And it allows you to get the the direct input from your, not the direct input, but the interpreted input from your player much more easily using this keyboard last car. Say I put Shift equals this on a QWERTY keyboard, this should give a plus instead of an equal, and so this will allow you to have a plus. It means that you don't have to worry about interpreting whether you press the Shift key, whether what kind of keyboard you have, etc. It will all be done by GameMaker simply by using keyboard last car, which is really quite nice. However, we still have a problem, and that is that if we put the pound sign, this one, the hashtag sign, as some of you may know it, we're going to get a new line instead of this actual sign. And so what we need to do is handle those separately. Now the way we're going to do this is using a switch statement. So switch keyboard last car. And so we're going to have, well, two basic cases. The first, well, the case we're going to put here is default case. Default, if I could spell this correctly. So if it's, just a basic character, we'll add it on. However, we're going to have another case, and that is if the case is, if the keyboard last car was a pound sign, we want to add not the pound sign, but a backslash pound sign. Oh, and remember to break your switch statement every time. That's really quite important. Now, if you did want to add anything else, for example, say you wanted to add, every time you put an L, instead it will put, something like hi instead. You could totally do that, and it will work perfectly well. However, we're not going to do that because it doesn't make much sense for a generic input system. But depending on your game application, whatever you're doing, you may want to add some sort of feature like that. For example, if you put an H, it will put hello directly, and something like that. I don't know. However, this system you can add up on really quite easily just using this switch statement. What we're gonna do now is, well, run the game, see if it works. However, before we do that, we do need to add another event, and that's the draw event. And we're simply going to draw our text. And really quite easy, we're just going to do draw underscore text, position X, position Y, text. So we're just drawing our text easily. Let's just create a room, place our object like over here, and press play. And what we should get is a very, very basic input system. However, it's not finished yet. So I can write lol, hello, I can use the spaces. I cannot use the backspace though, which is something I would that we are going to add. We're even going to add pasting text, etc. And if I can use the number keys up here. And I can also use the special characters by pressing shift and holding it down. Even though we didn't program that in, the keyboard LASCAR handles it all for us, which is really nice. And so I can keep on typing and do more stuff. However, there's quite a few things missing. The first thing is we didn't actually add the blinking cursor, and we didn't add backspace or pasting, etc. So we're going to do that now. It shouldn't take too long. First, inside our draw event, we're going to actually draw our cursor. So we're going to go if blink, so if the cursor is on, we need to calculate how far along the x-axis it is. So var length is equal to string width text. Now what string width does is give you the width in pixels of the text you're about to draw. It takes into account the font that's currently active and the text that you input, and it will calculate how wide it is. This is actually really quite useful if you're doing anything with text really and you want to display it properly. I've seen quite a few people fiddling around with fonts saying, oh, each character is 20 pixels long, stuff like that. And it never really matches up correctly because that's not exactly true. Here's how you do it. You use string width. It's really nice that it's actually in GameMaker. It really makes it easy to handle text. It's probably in all the programming languages, I don't actually know. And they have the same thing for the height. String underscore height text. And this will allow us to get how far along the x-axis we need to put our cursor and how tall our cursor should be. So now we can just draw a line. So our x position plus the length, y position, then our x position plus the length again, and the y position plus the height. So it will draw a vertical line, length pixels away from the start of the text, and make it a height of height. However, if we play it now, you'll see that there is a problem, and that is if I start typing, it's blinking even when I am typing. However, most programs, if not all, have it blinking only when you're not typing anymore. And whenever you're typing, it's supposed to stop blinking. So what we can do is inside the key press any key, over here, say that blink is equal to true. So as soon as we type, we can see the cursor again. And to stop it blinking, we can simply reset the timer. So alarm 0 is equal to blink speed. And now, if I press play, and then we finish compiling it, you can see the cursor blinking, but whenever I'm typing, it's no longer blinking, which is how most programs behave, which is really quite nice. Oh yeah, just to show, I can add my pound sign without it making a legal line, which is nice. If you're interested, I could take this off, this case over here, and you'll see that whenever I put a pound sign, it will create a new line. So if I put text and then a pound sign, you don't see it and it's starting a new line. And this is not what we want. We just want a simple one-line text input. So I'm going to put this case back in. And now what we need to add is the backspace key. and the pacing key, etc. So this is probably the last piece of code we're going to add. It's mediumly long. It's about the same size as this over here. The first thing we want to do is make sure we're not pressing the control key. If we are pressing the control key, we want to do something else. So I'm going to put an if statement. So if we're not pressing the keyboard, keyboard control key, we want to have a switch statement. And our switch is going to be our keyboard key. Now the reason I'm using the switch statement is that you may want to have more than one case. We're only going to add the backspace, but you could add other keys. For example, enter, making a new line. You could add all sorts of stuff. You know, F1 could do something, depending on what exactly you're doing. So we want to do case of vk underscore backspace. If the text, in order to get the text minus the last bit, we could simply use string delete. However, it's much easier to use string copy. So I'm going to do text is equal to string underscore copy, and all we're going to do is copy the whole text minus one character at the end. It makes sense. So text for the string, index, well, we want to copy from the start of the text, and count, we want the length of the text minus 1. So string underscore length text minus 1. So we're going to copy all the text but the last character, and that's going to be our new text, and break it. And then we can have a default, because we always need a default, and for the default we're just going to break, not do anything. Now that's it for backspacing, so we can test this right now. Now, as I said, you could add an enter key, and I'm going to show you how to do that. However, it does cause a problem with our text input cursor. So here I can add some random text, add this, whatever, and then I may say, hey, I actually don't want that. Now, as you can see, there is a problem. If I put some pound signs, and then I put the backspace, I end up with the character just before that, because remember, our pound sign is actually two characters. It's the backslash and the pound sign. So whenever we encounter a pound sign, we actually need to destroy two. So what we need to do now is create another switch statement within a switch statement. So what we're going to do, is add a switch statement here. Switch. Let's do string underscore. Now actually, I have to confess, I did only notice this at the very end. Just right now, I haven't actually got this in my example code on my other screen, so I'm gonna have to do this right now. I am actually doing this live. I didn't actually did this before. So what we want to do is switch the last character. So we're gonna do text, and the index is gonna be string length. I'm not sure if it should be length minus 1, so we're going to have to try this later on. So we're going to switch for the last character. Going to indent my code. And we want to have default, just subtract it. So I'm going to copy this. I'll cut it actually and paste it here. However, if the case is, if it's a pound sign, we want to remove two characters. Sorry, that's not exactly right. We want to add string length minus 1 over here. Never mind. If it's a pound sign, we want to subtract it. We want to subtract 2. So I'm just gonna copy this over here again, paste it here, and here do minus 2. And this should, I think, work. Let's save this. I'm not entirely sure because I haven't tested this, but if I put some text in, this works. Subtracting still works, and if I put a pound sign, subtracting it works. Good. So as you can see now, if I do have a pound sign, it doesn't put the backslash back in. I'm subtracting both characters. So sorry if this was a little unclear. Basically, because over here, whenever we put a pound sign, we're actually putting two characters in. The original method of backspacing would actually remove only this character here and leave the backslash right before it. So what we're doing here is saying that if we do have a pound sign as the last character that we're deleting, deletes two characters instead of one, so that we get rid of this whole bit of text over here. So that is it. That's it for backspacing. All we need to do now is maybe pasting code. So pasting text. So I'm just going to add an else statement over here and add a switch statement again. As you can see, we're using a lot of switch statements, even though we could use an if statements for these particular examples because we only have one case, well, two cases. It's a lot neater to use a switch statement because it's really easy to expand upon. So switch, keyboard key. Oh yeah, by the way, I should probably mention this. I'm putting an else statement here, which means that this only will get executed if you are pressing the control key. So if you are pressing the control key, we want to switch between the keyboard keys. And if the case is the V key, so ORD V, then we want to paste the text. So text plus is equal to clipboard get text. Clipboard, where is it? Clipboard get text over here. And break. And then of course we need, this should be ORD, not ORD. And then of course we need a default, which is gonna just be break. So here you could add some other stuff. You could say if he puts Control E, it does something. If he does Control T, something else happens. You name it. You could put anything you like. So you could just put in your case. I'm just gonna demonstrate this over here by adding a new line. I could do case vk underscore enter. Then I could just do text plus is equal to this, the pound sign. And now, if I push enter, so if I put some text and I put enter, I should have a new line. And I'm not pressing the pound sign. So this is quite nice. So as you can see, you can add as many keys as you like. I'm not going to put this in because this is more of a a username or password kind of input system. Oh yeah, and we just implemented the pasting, didn't we? So we just need to test that. So I'm going to bring up Notepad, add some text. For example, hello, this is pasted text. I'm going to highlight it, Control C, to copy it. I'm just going to copy this so you can see I did. Launch this, and now I should be able to press Control V in order to paste it. So I can put some text if I want to, and then here you go. And I can paste as many times as I like. So yeah, this is pretty much it for this tutorial. I think it was rather short. Yeah, I think it's a really nice system. This one's a little bare bones, there isn't much to it. However, it does allow you to expand upon it really, really easily. If you wanted to add highlighting text, etc., I have modified a version of this earlier in order to do it. It was a bit longer though, and a bit more complicated, so I didn't want to include it in the tutorial. But it's totally possible using this system. You can add as many keys as you like. Yeah, I think it's really quite nice. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. And I'll see you guys next time for some more videos.